I've been as frustrated as any other woman who is middle-aged or older about just how easy it is to pack on extra pounds. So I set out to learn if there was anything I could do about it. A few months ago, I discovered biochemist Jessie Inchauspé, otherwise known as the Glucose Goddess. And I decided to implement 3 of her famous tips, or hacks as she calls them, for healthier glucose levels to see if it would help me prevent weight gain. I did this because between what I've learned from her and Dr. Stacy Sims, it's clear to me that managing our glucose levels well can be a big step forward towards easier weight management, not to mention better health outcomes in many important areas. I'm going to share with you which of the 3 hacks I've been practicing and what my experience has been so far. If weight management has been an area of frustration for you too, perhaps this will empower you to tackle it from a whole new angle. Well, hi there. Thanks so much for joining me. So with this video, my hope is just to put some new information on your radar, kind of introduce some new concepts in case you've not already heard about them. Of course, I am not a medical professional or a scientist or anything like that, so this is not to be taken as advice, actual advice. However, if you do find what I talk about in this video interesting, then I would encourage you, of course, to dig deeper on your own, to go over to Jessie's website. That would be a good start, or her YouTube channel. I will link to both of those below, as well as any other resources. But just to kind of dig in and do your own, do your own homework and make sure that you're understanding the information. So in a nutshell, here's what I have learned. Dr. Stacy Sims explains that as our estrogen levels decline, so starting with perimenopause forward, our bodies are not able to utilize glucose as efficiently as it once was, and that's tied to the decrease in estrogen. It creates a situation called increased insulin resistance, which basically means that our body can't utilize glucose as efficiently as it once could. And this scenario sets us up for weight gain, especially in our bellies. You know, that famous menopause belly? That has a lot to do with that. So here's a bit of a conundrum. Glucose is created every time we eat carbohydrates. Our body converts carbohydrates into glucose. And carbohydrates primarily come from plant foods. And of course, to have good health, and especially good health long term, we must eat like a wide variety of healthy whole plant foods, right? All of which have carbohydrates in them. Now, granted, we don't need to eat the junky carbohydrates, the ones that are super problematic, like the processed sugar and flour and that sort of stuff, right? But we do need to eat a wide variety of plant foods. So if we have to eat those foods for good health, and those foods are the ones that create, that basically, create glucose in our bloodstream, what do we do? If we need to try, and our body's not utilizing that glucose as efficiently as it once was, is there anything we can do about that? And what I learned is that there are some things we can do. In other words, we can choose to eat those foods, those healthy carbohydrate-rich foods, a little differently at our meals, and that can make a huge difference for us in terms of the glucose and how the glucose acts in our body. So I was very excited to learn about this, and this is what I want to share with you here. But there are 2 things I want to mention real quickly before I go on. The first thing is that in no way am I implying that managing glucose levels is the only thing related to weight management and gaining weight or losing weight, because it is certainly not. Certainly, as an example, calories in versus calories out, making sure we eat less calories than what we burn, getting into a slight calorie deficit if we're trying to lose weight is really important. There's just no getting around that, right? We all know that. That's maybe the biggest piece of the puzzle, but there are other things too that can affect this. And then this whole thing around glucose, managing glucose levels, is just, I think, one other big piece to the puzzle, but it is not, of course, the entire it's not the entire puzzle. And secondly, of course, is that I am just sharing this information as I understand it, my interpretation of what I've learned. And so, of course, if this is something that you find interesting, naturally, I would say to, like I mentioned earlier, do your own homework on it. See if you interpret the information the same way or differently. Perhaps speak with your doctor if you're under the doctor's care, and that sort of thing before you make any big changes. But my whole point of doing this is just to kind of put this on the radar and then let you take it from there. So let me briefly tell you who this Jessie Inchauspé is, otherwise known as the Glucose Goddess. She is a biochemist, and she is a author. She wrote a book, I think about 3 years ago, maybe it was, called Glucose Revolution. It was an international bestseller. To be honest, I didn't know about it at the time that it came out. But anyway, she has about 1.75 million viewers here on YouTube. So she's got a big channel. She's been on a lot of the big media outlets, like the big media outlets. So she has had a lot of success, to say the least, in sort of getting her message out there. And of course, you can go learn more about her and how she even came. She is a biochemist, but how did she come into focusing in on how glucose affects human health? That because she doesn't just talk about it from a weight management standpoint. In fact, she hardly talks about it that way. But anyway, because there's a lot more to it. Certainly, she talks a lot about how managing our glucose levels better helps prevent a lot of inflammation in the body, which obviously is a big deal for a lot of reasons. And so anyway, she has a lot of interesting takes on the whole thing. But anyway, in a nutshell, that's who she is. And basically what she's doing is she's trying to educate people around the concept that very large spikes in our insulin are problematic when they're chronic. And most of us, because the way we eat, especially like the standard American diet, which isn't great. Let's face it. It creates a lot of big spikes in our insulin, and that is, you keep doing that over and over and over and over again, it becomes real problematic for a lot of different reasons. And of course, it's very normal for insulin to kind of go up and then go down. You have these peaks and these dips all throughout the day when we eat food, even when we're eating just super healthy food. And there's other things that can make our insulin go up and down too, from what I understand. So, but it mainly food is the one we can control better and that people think about, right? And so her whole thing is if there's things we can do to keep our insulin, instead of doing, to keep it more like this rolling, like a rolling hill almost, rather than these big up, spikes up and then these crashes down. And because that's what creates the issues. And not only with regards to, like I said, around how our body can manage glucose and how that affects weight gain and even weight loss to an extent, but how it affects inflammation in the body and so many other things. So anyway, it's well worth knowing this information for a variety of reasons. Okay, so I was curious about, what's happening when we get these big spikes and then these big drops? Like, how does that affect weight gain, weight loss, anything related to weight management? That was what I was curious about. And though there may be more reasons, a few of the reasons that I walked away with as far as why this is keeping our glucose levels more regulated and not these big spikes and dips, helps with satiation. So you feel full longer. That's a good thing, right? So then if we're feeling full longer, we're not going to be snacking as much and eating as many calories in a day. Also, it helps us feel full longer. That's a good thing. Also, it creates a decrease in food cravings. You know how it's so frustrating when you eat a meal, and it's a good meal. You don't feel hungry anymore, but then an hour or two later, you're craving something. You're craving a snack. It's like, that makes no sense. I just ate a full meal like an hour or 2 hours ago. I should not be craving anything. Have you had this happen to you? It happens to me sometimes, and I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. Like, I know I'm not hungry. Why do I feel like I want to eat? So that's generally speaking an insulin response situation. And so when we get these big spikes and crashes, that will create those food cravings more. Well, that's generally what creates them from what I understand. And when we manage our glucose levels well, it puts the body in a better position to continue to be able to burn fat as fuel. So if we have a few extra pounds on us, we don't want to mess up anything, right? With our body being able to burn that fat. We want that to happen. So what happens is when we eat carbohydrates, basically our body converts that into glucose, then insulin comes rushing in, and it scoops up that glucose out of the blood, and it starts shuttling it around to the insulin receptors that are all over our body, so our body can use it for energy right away. And part of what it does when it's doing that is it also signals the body to stop burning fat for fuel. So basically, that's not good. We don't want that any more than we have to, right? So but what happens is once it stores as much glucose, once it shuttles as much glucose as it can into those receptors all over our body, those insulin receptors, if there's anything left over, which oftentimes there is, especially if you're a woman who is perimenopausal, postmenopausal, and your glucose, you've now developed, because of decline in estrogen, you've now developed this increased insulin resistance. That means that your body can't store away, or not even store away, can't utilize as much of that glucose that's in your blood as it would once could have. And so, and I won't get into the mechanics behind that, but basically what that means is once it shuttles away everything that it can for your body to use for energy, if there's whatever's left over, it has to store it. It can't leave it in the blood. That's dangerous, right? You don't want to have really high blood sugar levels. We all know that becomes very dangerous, even deadly to people if it gets crazy out of hand. So your body naturally is going to be like, I got to get this out of the blood. So we've stored it we've shuttled it everywhere we can. The insulin receptors won't take anymore. The only thing it can do, from my understanding, is it then signals certain cells in the body to convert that glucose, that remaining glucose that's in the blood, convert it to triglycerides. And you're probably familiar with that word, but that is fat. So your body is actually making fat and storing it as fat. So that is the big issue with weight gain right there when it comes to being tied to glucose, is that not only is it signaling the body to stop burning fat that's already on the body, it is whatever is left over in the blood that can't be utilized in a timely fashion is then converted into more fat and stored away. So you can see how this you're starting to see how this kind of comes together, right? Okay, so with all of that in mind, I decided I was going to try some of Jessie's hacks, and I'm going to share with you the 3 hacks of hers, 3 out of 10. She has 10 that she shares with everybody, but I will let you know the 3 that I've done and am doing still. And what that experience has been like. But before I do that, if you're enjoying this video so far, I would love it if you would give it a like. And of course, if you want to see more content around holistic self-care for women over 50, then be sure to subscribe to the channel. Okay, so the first one is kind of, I think, her biggest one that she leads with. And it does make a lot of sense when you think about it. So the first hack, as she calls it, is to sort of eat your food, your meals, in a specific order. And you can do, I mean, most of the time this is pretty easy to do. Now there are some dishes that, like, everything's mixed together, there's no way you can do this. And that's what she says. She's like, well, when it's easy, do it. So what that looks like is she's talking about eating, basically starting with your veggies. So when you take your meal, you eat your veggies first, and particularly the non-starchy veggies, which is most veggies, honestly. Potatoes would be starchy, and I guess corn would be starchy, but I think most of the others are mostly non-starchy. And you eat those first, and the reason is because all that beautiful fiber that's in those vegetables, when it gets down into your intestine, it films, or it creates sort of like a gooey or maybe a gelatinous sort of type of texture, and basically it kind of coats that area down there, and what it does is it slows the digestion of the food that comes after it. So it's the fiber in those veggies that are basically the magic for what makes this all work. So she says, eat your veggies first, and then you would eat your protein heavy, whatever it is you're eating, the protein portion of your meal. And then you would follow that with all of the starchy carbohydrates. So that would be, again, like potatoes and corn, and if you have pasta, and those would be third. So basically you break your meal into three parts: veggies first, then protein, and then the starches and your sweets. Okay, another good tip that she gave, one of the other ones I'm practicing, is where you eat your treats, your sweet treats, and your like crackers and things like that, just your junky treats. Let's just leave it at that. Eat them on the tail end of a meal instead of as a standalone snack. And I have eaten them as a standalone snack for probably as far back as I can remember, until I learned about this. So just, eat lunch or dinner and then just have so basically you're eating your treats as dessert instead of in between meals. And because you've already eaten your food in a certain order, you're slowing digestion way down. And it's just that slowing down of the digestion that helps flatten down that glucose spike. It doesn't make it flat, that wouldn't be normal, but it makes it a gradual peak and valley, as opposed to this big spike and this big dip. And the third one is to move for 10 minutes after every meal. So within 30 minutes of finishing a meal, move around for 10 minutes. She said you could be dancing, you could go for a walk, you could be cleaning your house. You're just active. You're up, you're moving. You're not just sitting there, basically. And so, just moving for 10 minutes after every meal. So that's the third one that I have been practicing. Okay, so have these hacks worked for me? I bet you're wondering, right? So, yes, they have. I will definitely say that I have noticed a difference. It's been about 3 months now that I've been practicing these. I'm pretty consistent. I don't get it right every time. I would say I get it right, 85% of the time, probably. And yes, I have noticed a difference in food cravings, less food cravings, absolutely. Because again, that was a frustrating one for me in terms of just having ate, and this didn't happen every day all the time, but when it does happen, it's frustrating. I just ate 2 hours ago. I ate a good meal. I was perfectly satiated. And now I feel like I'm not hungry, but I'm really craving something, a snack, right? That has gone way down, and that's a really helpful thing, isn't it? Certainly is for me. Also, I will say that I do feel as though I stay full a little bit longer than I used to. And I think this would depend on where you're starting from. Because I eat a lot of plants, I eat a ton of fiber. I have for a long time stayed full even if I get a food craving, I'm still, like I said, I wasn't hungry. But so I've been able to, because of all the fiber that I eat, I'm able to stay full, feel satiated for a pretty long time. Between the meals thing and stuff is not really a problem for me. However, that said, I do feel like I've probably seen a bit of a difference, a bit of an improvement yet over, when it comes to staying full a little longer. But definitely the food craving one, I noticed a significant difference there. And also, I will say that I do feel as though it's been a little bit easier for me a little bit smoother for me to lose weight. And again, I'm not losing weight at a rapid pace, but I feel as though it's been at a more consistent pace since I've been doing this. It's just where before it was just, it'd go down. Maybe I might say I might lose a pound over a couple weeks, but then it might go right back up over the next couple weeks, and then it might come down a couple pounds, and then I've seemed to have been on more of a strictly downward trajectory since I've been doing this. And again, a very gradual one for me, because I'm not eating at a huge calorie deficit. I'm eating at a small calorie deficit, I would say. But I have noticed a bit of a difference there. So again, I think to the extent at which somebody will experience the changes depends on the starting point, as with anything, right? Now, the really interesting thing, you can take a look at this in like hard, fast numbers, like actual data. And that's what I'm thinking about doing next. So Jessie teaches about how to utilize a continuous glucose monitor for 1 month, and to get actual data on your body and how it's actually responding every single meal, every single snack, to what you're putting in there. And I have been thinking about doing this because I think it'd be fascinating to get this hard data on just my body, right? It's not about anybody else's body, it's about what my body's doing. And so I'm thinking about possibly doing that soon, and then and then doing a video about what that experience has been like. So if you have any interest in seeing that video, be sure to let me know down in the comments, and I will take that into consideration, because I do think that would be very interesting. But basically, the continuous glucose monitor is just a little thing that goes on your arm. Apparently, it's not uncomfortable in any way. And she talks about using a company called Stello. I'll link to them below. These companies, like Stello, they make these for people who want to. They're not medical devices. They're not considered medical devices that people that are trying to monitor their diabetes should use. Just to put that out there. They are companies that basically create these things for, basically use for somebody to do their own monitoring, that are not diabetics, to just from a health perspective, understand their body better so they can make different food choices. It's a different product. It works a lot in the same way, but it's a different product than what medical devices are that are provided to people who have diabetes and need to monitor that. So anyway, she does teach about how to utilize one, how to use one, and all of that too. And I think that would be fascinating, because again, if you go to her Instagram account, you will see she will wear one from time to time, and you usually wear them for a month, and then that's it. And you can do it several times a year if you want to, but it's really just one time, just to see how your body reacts to things. But on her Instagram account, she shows where she'll eat the same meal 2 different ways, or somebody else will, and then they'll show the actual data from that. It's fascinating how different it can be. It's wild. So anyways, I will link to that below, but again, you can check her information out. And I will say that not too long ago, we actually had, my husband and I, some friends of ours, they did this as a couple. They got a set of the glucose monitors. They wore them for a month, and we went bike riding with them one day, and I was talking to them about it. And they said it was just such a fascinating experiment, like to just understand their body better, to see how they were shocked at how differently things, one thing affected the glucose and something else didn't, and all of that. And again, there's different things that make your glucose go up and down besides just food. So that's an important thing to understand. And again, Jessie's the Glucose Goddess, Glucose Revolution is her channel. She would be the one to basically look into her information around how to do all that, and how to read it, and what not to read into it, and all that stuff. Anyway, so that's it. That has been my experience. I hope that's helpful in some way. If you enjoyed this video, YouTube thinks you're going to like this one too, so I hope you do. And other than that, I will be seeing you real soon in the next video. Take good care.